Welcome everybody to World is a Mess, and I just want to steampunk it. This is episode 77. This is September 21st, 2022. I'm your host, Steampunk Star Raisin, and I'm here in North Hollywood, California, USA. And I'm here with my co-host, Daniel Bertison. He is in Bellwood, Ontario, Canada. How's it going, Daniel?
Hi, I'm doing better. Thanks. How you doing?
Well, that's good. I'm glad you're doing better. So, what's on your mind?
Uh, okay, first of all, let's talk about what's happening in Ukraine.
Okay, let me go to my main source, which is Al Jazeera. I really like Al Jazeera because I feel like they give a non-biased view of the Ukrainian war. On US, it's always about, well, Putin this, Putin, Putin can't stand up against Ukraine and the United States, and so, when I hear in Western media, it tends to be a lot of propaganda. And then, of course, Russia Today is going to have the Russian side of that propaganda. So I like something that's a little bit more neutral, like Al Jazeera. And they have a really good Ukraine war map that's updated live, which they did have. Oh, wait. Yeah. Yeah. So let me go ahead and share the sharing screen. Clicking on sharing screen. Anyway. Okay, so this is a live map. That's one thing I like. This is a live map. This is not a static map. This is day 210 of the war, September 21st, 2022, 10 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time. And, of course, the white areas are Ukrainian. The white areas are Ukrainian held territory. The blue areas are Ukrainian counteroffensives. The red areas are Russian sphere of influence or Russian-controlled territory. And the yellow area is the Donbas region that Russia has claimed for itself, but has not currently conquered yet. And within the last week, Russia has suffered some severe setbacks. They lost the city of Izum. I think that's how you pronounce it, Izum. And they lost a lot of territory to the east of Kharkiv. And there's a lot of guerrilla activity behind the lines. They're launching a counterattack. Looks like right here. The Ukrainians are attacking here towards the center. I guess they're trying to reach Mariupol, but they've yet to reach Mariupol. They've yet to retake Kherson. The Ukrainian army has been launching a lot of counterattacks towards Kherson, but for whatever reason, they have failed to take Kherson. So I think the critical tipping point for Russia losing the war would be if they could retake Kherson and cut off the water supply to Crimea. That was the whole reason why the Russian army took Garrison, was so that they could capture the dike that was blocked, that used to provide water supply to Crimea. They reopened up the water supply because they had a critical water shortage in the Crimean region. And so, but for whatever reason, Ukrainian army has not been able to mount an effective counterattack towards Kherson. Yeah, they captured a lot of territory near Kharkiv, but they had already retaken Kharkiv, like 6 months ago. This is just a bunch of smaller towns. And yeah, it's a lot of territory to lose, but until they kick Russia out of Kherson, Mariupol, and the Donetsk and Luhansk region, I don't see any end to the war in sight. Putin has also stated that he is calling up more reserves. He's doing a partial mobilization of about 300,000 troops, because from what I understand, the Russian army, they had about 150,000 troops. Let's see, Russian troop strength. A lot of that's probably going to be classified. Says currently there are 136 battalion tactical groups in the armed forces. The number of conscripts is around 225,000. The number of contractors amounts to 405,000. But anyway, from what I heard, let me stop sharing that. The Russian army had about 150,000 troops at the start of the war. They've lost about 15% of that, or what I had read. So that's maybe they've lost 22,000, 25,000 troops. And that creates logistical issues. They've lost a lot of armored vehicles, a lot of supply trucks. So they're having logistical problems, and a lot of the majority of their army appears to be conscripts who are poorly trained. So, and also poorly motivated. So we'll see. The West is already saying that this is a major victory, but yes, they did capture a significant amount of territory, but they need to capture strategic points before you can say it's a major victory. They need to kick Russia out of Crimea, Kherson, and Mariupol. But yeah, so it's hard to say when this war will end. But anyway, so what's your thoughts on the Ukrainian war, Daniel?
Wow, it's crazy. Like, one man and his little temper tantrum can cause all this. Basically, that's what he is.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's trying to become like a czar of Russia. Putin is not communist. He's capitalist. He's allied with the Russian Orthodox Church. He's politicized and weaponized religion.
And he's become the Antichrist, basically.
He's not the Antichrist. I don't believe in that kind of stuff. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. I believe in the scientific method. There's just no evidence for God. And other than mythological text. But I mean, I respect religion, but I don't think that, we got to be careful about getting into mysticism and superstition. Religion can have a very important historical context. And you have to be free from religion to have freedom of religion. So yeah, I don't view Putin as the Antichrist. But Putin is, he's not good either, but the Ukrainian side, they do have Nazi militias that they're allied with. And so there's a bit of gray on both sides. I
Wait a
don't
second,
think
there's the Nazis are still around. Oh yeah, they're not the new. You'll be talking about neo-Nazis, right?
Yeah, there's neo-Nazi militias in the Ukrainian army, and there's more than one battalion. It's not just the let's see, Ukraine's neo-Nazi militia. Okay, I was trying to think of the name. It was the Azov battalion. I mean, it's very subtle, neo-Nazi militia, because they have an armband that's like, got the Ukrainian flag, and it says Azov Battalion. But if you know anything about Azov, who was a Ukrainian Nazi collaborator during World War II, and the fact
Yeah,
that, yeah,
I don't know.
and
What else?
the fact that Azov is listed as national hero of Ukraine when he shouldn't be, and that the Ukrainian government has basically banned any other parties that they deem to be too pro-Russian, which is very anti-democratic.
There was an elderly lady that was in Ukraine, and she said like even the Nazis are not as brutal as the Russians are now.
That might be true based on her perspective. We're not there on the ground to give, I mean, there's been reports of war crimes committed by the Russian army. Like I said, there are no good guys in this.
No.
Because like some of the areas that Ukraine took, they claimed that they found mass graves with murdered civilians, but who's to say? I mean, the Russian army, if they found dead bodies, they would definitely bury them. So who's to say whether these were murdered, or was it friendly fire? Was it the fog of war? You can't just jump to conclusions until you have a little bit more critical data. You need empirical data, multiple sources of data. You need to use the scientific method. The scientific method can be your guide to clearing the fog of war, or clearing the fog of data that you get in, and to be able to discern the difference between gossip.
Dad, she's outside.
What's going on? What's going on? What's going
I'm
on?
sorry. I thought
We're doing a live recording, dude. What's going on? Hello?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, continue.
Okay. Everything okay with your dad? What's going on?
Oh no. He accidentally locked someone outside.
Oh, okay. Damn, your dog is freaking out.
No, he's just happy. So continue.
Yeah, that's all I really have to say about the update to the Ukraine war. I mean,
Oh, by the way, you know what? I was watching. 1 second. Okay, so anyways, can you see me?
I can see you. What's up?
Okay, so
up?
you know what?
Why is your dog
coming.
freaking out? What's
I don't
going
know.
on?
He's lonely, but okay, anyways, I was heading home with my mom, and I heard that Putin was threatening the world, saying, "Don't get involved in this because he's got nuclear weapons. He's threatened the world."
That
with
is
nuclear
true.
weapons.
This is very scary because this could start a nuclear war. We're just escalating, and that's another thing about Putin that's really bad, is he's used nuclear weapons. He said that he's put nuclear weapons on the table, that if Russian territories are attacked, he will use nuclear weapons. And so if that's true, then that'll spell the end of the world as we know it, where you're probably talking about like 99% of the population of the world wiped out within a year.
Yeah, but you know what? They said if he tries anything, they're not going to let him do it. And if he tries anything, everyone's going to gang up on him.
I
And blow
don't
him up.
know. I mean, he is a strong man of Russia. We will see. This is very chaotic and very dangerous. If I were Biden, I would try to, Putin is not a good man. Don't get me wrong. But for the sake of the world, you shouldn't risk nuclear war just over the Ukraine conflict. We should seek for peace and negotiations so that we can end the fighting and end the threats of nuclear war, because we're closer than ever to the chance of nuclear war because of this war. And so, and the longer this war drags on, who knows what the hell will happen. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
very scary times as far as that. And also, like I've said in previous podcasts, I'm really worried about what's going to happen to the world food supply, because Ukraine was known as the breadbasket of the world, and with this war disrupting production, it's going to make it much harder for people to get food around the world, and it's going to continue to increase the price of food, making things even more difficult and politically and creating more political instability worldwide. So I worry that this could be the start of a world war if we're not careful.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this guy seems a little bit unstable. Like if you try to talk to him, he'll just go crazy, right? So I don't know. I mean, do you leave him alone or do you try to negotiate with him? Because negotiating doesn't help, right? They tried to negotiate with him many times, but he just said, he just told everybody, hey, I'm going to do this whether you like it or not, right? So there's no negotiating with this guy. Just this guy.
Well, I disagree. I think there's room for negotiation. You at least got to try. You don't have to agree on negotiation, but we don't even have a direct line of dialogue open up right now. At least talk. Yeah, you may not be able to negotiate with him. He may not cooperate, but you at least got to open up a line of dialogue that makes things both more empathetic on both sides, so that we can avoid nuclear war. That's the biggest thing I worry about. This
Yeah, I know.
once
But
the nukes start dropping, then they're going to retaliate. The West will retaliate with more nukes, and then the next thing you know, civilization as we know it and most people are gone.
yeah, I mean, this guy's got definite mental problems, man.
Well, I'm not going to speculate into the head of Putin, but yeah, he used to be a KGB colonel during the Soviet Union. He's always been very devious, and he's had pretty much dictatorial power since the late 90s. I'm seeing here, like since the Russian Federation was created, you had Boris Yeltsin, and then Putin, then Dmitry, and then you had President Dmitry, however you pronounce his last name, and then Putin back in power again since 2012. But even under the leadership of Dmitry Medvedev, or Medvedev, anyway, even under the leadership of President Dmitry, you still had Putin. He was basically, a lot of people were saying he was Putin's puppet, and Putin still was controlling the strings. And so you really, since the late 90s, Russia has been under, authoritarian leadership of Putin. And so I don't know if there's going to be an end in sight for this whatsoever. I don't know anytime soon. I can't really judge that. I don't have enough information, but from all the information I'm seeing, the war is going to indefinitely continue to go on, because yes, the Ukrainian army, like at the Battle of Kiev, has had some decisive victories, but they haven't been able to fully kick Russia out of eastern Ukraine. You still there?
Yep, I'm here.
Is anything else you have to add to this before we move on to another
Yeah,
topic?
I don't think they could, because Russia is bigger than Ukraine, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of like an ant versus an elephant, sort of, right?
Well, Russia does have a larger army, better equipment. They have more equipment than the Ukrainian army, and I think that's part of the reason why Ukraine hasn't been able to effectively retake Kherson, which would be should be their next strategic goals to retake that city, because then they can cut off the water supply to Crimea. But I know I saw a news article where it said that the Ukraine army was trying to buy Abrams tanks from the United States. So we shall see, because they said that they need those tanks for to be able to counterattack, and they have mostly old Soviet equipment. So we shall see what happens, but it could take many months for those tanks to deploy. So I don't know when there's, from what I can tell, there's no decisive end to the war within sight. It's just going to continue to go on. It could go on for years.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see if the rumors that Putin is dying of cancer are true. I don't know what would happen if Putin were to die of cancer. Who would take over? Would they continue Putin's policies? It's really hard to say. There's a lot of unknowns here. And I could speculate, but I can't decisively say. From what I can see, there's no end in sight to the war. Yes, they captured a lot of the countryside. They captured a lot of like little tiny villages, but they need to capture decisive objectives like Kherson and Mariupol and Crimea in order for the war to end. And even if they were to do that, who's to say that Russia wouldn't remobilize and re-counterattack? But we will see where it goes. But yeah, these are dangerous times because we're in a lot of ways closer to nuclear war than we ever were before in world history, because you got people like Putin actively talking about it.
Yeah, but didn't this happen before many, many times, like when the Cold War and Vietnam?
Yeah, but it's not quite the same because Russia is now directly involved. Instead of like fighting the Korean army, the North Korean army, or fighting the Viet Cong, you know, a U.S. ally is directly fighting the Russians on the Russia border. So this is a little different, but in some ways it's similar, but also in a lot of ways different. This is Cold War 2.0, also partially a hot war because the United States is providing direct arms and logistics to the Ukrainian army, and the Russian army is in direct conflict. Before, it was just another Cold War because you had Donetsk and Luhansk districts. They had their own militias that were trained and equipped by the Russian army. But now you have now Russian troops directly involved since February, and there is no end in sight. So I don't know what else what else I could say about it. I don't know when it's going to end. And it's very dangerous times, and that's all I can say. So anything else you have to say about this before we move on to another topic?
No, I'm fine. What else would you like to talk about?
We can talk about House of the Dragon.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I've seen the first 3 episodes, and I was actually pleasantly surprised. I think they're on episode 5 now. And I was actually pleasantly surprised by House of the Dragon. Matt Smith plays a really good villain. He's like a badass, and then you learn to respect him because he's also a really good military commander. But he's also brutal, and he's a sadist. He enjoys torturing peasants. He enjoys cutting off the limbs of peasants. But yeah, Matt Smith plays a really good bad guy, and You have the Targaryen family. Of course, this takes place 179 years before the original Game of Thrones. So there's no direct context to Game of Thrones, but there is indirect context because, you know, you have the Targaryen family. They all have white hair, and it's interesting. But yeah, the only criticism I have of House of the Dragon is the dragons are kind of an afterthought. Like, you see the dragons in the background and they don't really play a major role. And then sometimes it can be a little stuffy and it can drag on a little bit and be a little bit slow. But overall, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I thought it was just going to be a snore fest, but I thought it was pretty good, pretty interesting character development. You got the
Sounds
first.
like a prequel to the
It
Game
is
of
a
Thrones.
prequel. It is a prequel. It's what I was saying. It takes place 179 years before Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Did you ever watch Game of Thrones?
Nope, never did.
But yeah, Game of Thrones was pretty good, although it had a disappointing and anticlimactic final season. It was season 8, but maybe in some ways this could make up for it. But yeah, Matt Smith plays the brother of the king, and he feels entitled to the throne. And by episode 3, the king has taken a young wife, and he's got a new heir to the throne. So you have all these people who are competing for the throne.
Mm-hmm.
You have the king's daughter who is chosen to be successor, but her line to the throne is about to be overridden by the fact that he has a son. And you also have Matt Smith, who is competing for the throne. And then they're also fighting these crab pirates, which are kind of weird. They're basically these pirates that live out by the ocean that torture people and let them get eaten alive of crabs. It's kind of grueling, but interesting villain. I can't remember the name of the character on that, but
back in those days, kings can take wives like nothing. You know, wow, they can get laid. Easy.
Well, I mean, kings were authoritarian dictators. Their word was law. They were above the law. They were the enforcer of the law. They claimed to have divine right to rule as king. And so, yeah, the royals in Game of Thrones are very similar to royals in medieval Europe.
Oh yeah,
This is what held back Europe for over 1,000 years. Were your European royals. It wasn't really until the Black Death that wiped out the majority of the European population, including the majority of the royal population, that it allowed the peasants to have freedom to rebuild and create the Renaissance, and thus create a booming middle class. But before the Black Death in the 14th century and before the Renaissance in the 15th century, yeah, for 1,000 years, we were relegated to the Dark Ages, to where we basically destroyed data, anything that challenged the state religion. The Catholic Church for 1,000 years was the state religion. It was the state religion under the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire, and it was the state religion in most European countries after the Roman Empire fell apart. So, and it was, that's the reason why Christianity became such a mainstream religion, because it was dictated by the sword. You either converted to be a Christian or you were converted by the sword. So, in other words, that you had to be a Christian to get ahead, or you could also be burned as a heretic if you even challenged the church. You had, like, the astronomer Copernicus, who was burned alive at the stake by the Catholic Church in, I think it was like in the 1600s, because he dared to challenge the church and say that the earth revolved around the sun. The church had this religious belief that the earth was the center of the universe, so the sun revolved around the earth. So,
Yeah.
this held back science for over 1,000 years. We could have gone to the moon 1,000 years ago. If it hadn't been for state-sanctioned religion, authoritarian religion, and anti-intellectualism. And if it hadn't been for the royals of Europe holding technological advance back.
Yeah, we could have had a cure for cancer by now, probably.
Probably, you know, and then we have people who are, you know, in the Republican Party who are claiming to be, or not claiming, they publicly identify as Christian nationalists, and the Nazis identified as Christian nationalists. So Nazis were Roman Catholic during World War II. That's one thing that we should never forget, because history tends to repeat itself if we ignore it and forget about it. It's just going to repeat, you know, and we're not going to learn the lessons that we should have learned.
Yeah. Oh, okay. By the way, okay, speaking of, okay, wait, first of all, did the Dark Ages start after Rome fell? I think the Dark Ages started.
Depending on, you know, there's a difference of opinion. The Dark Ages started in 391 AD. Carl Sagan and both myself, I would say it started in 391 AD, because 391 AD was where you had a self-proclaimed Coptic Pope. I can't even pronounce his name. It's a long Greek name that I can't even pronounce. But you had a self-proclaimed Coptic Pope who burned the Library of Alexandria, destroying thousands of years of records in the year 391 AD. And Christian religion started to purge itself of paganism, which it viewed as a competitor to its power base. And you also had the Council of Nicaea before that, in 316 AD, under Emperor Constantine, that created the state-sanctioned religion, and the first Catholic Church created the first Bible written in Greek, which was later translated into Latin, which was later translated into, so it went from Greek to Latin to medieval German with the Gutenberg Bible, and then later translated into archaic modern English with the King James Version of the Bible. And so I would argue that the Dark Ages started in 391 AD, and it didn't end until the early 1500s. So you had 1,100 years of Dark Ages where the royals ruled, and the only people who were educated were the top 1%. Everybody else was an illiterate peasant. You had to trust your local priest or your local bishop for their interpretation of the Bible, because most people at that time couldn't read. And disease was rampant. Healthcare was non-existent. You worked yourself to death on the farm, and the majority of your crops that you produced went to the royals, went to the dukes, noble lords, and kings. And if we're not careful, we're going to return to that system, but it'll just be different names for the same things. Instead of dukes, lords, and kings, it'll be corporate executives and CEOs. We're almost that way now, you know, where you have people who are born into the executive board because their dad was on the executive board before them, and their dad was a shareholder, and they inherited shares from that company. You know, most of the Fortune 500, it's mostly just, who do you know? What family were you born into? Like even Elon Musk, the world's richest man, he was born into a wealthy family. His daddy paid for his apartment and paid for his schooling. His dad owned an emerald mine in South Africa. So, you know, to say that there are such things as self-made billionaires is just simply not true. But what's happening today correlates to the Dark Ages, because we're repeating history over again.
Yeah. just like the Queen of England, a lot of people are angry at the Queen because the Queen had a good life. She won the genetic lottery. She was rich. She didn't have to go through what other people had to go through. She didn't have to worry about getting a job or getting fired or worried about, oh my God, what am I going to eat tonight? Or how am I going to sleep tonight? You know, she didn't have these problems. That's why she lived to be 96. You know, she had a good life. She didn't have to worry about what me or you have to go through. She was never abused by her family or the police like me or anybody else in
Well,
the world.
I agree with you. I don't think there should be a royal family. You can claim to be of royal descent and claim to be of royal blood, but it shouldn't be a state sanctioned thing. And that I fundamentally disagree with having a royal family. It's very archaic, and you know, it's not right to the rest of the people to through their taxes to support that kind
Mhm.
of elite class.
Yeah.
But we are running out of time.
Oh, before we
We're
go,
running out of time. I got to cut it.
all right.
What's up? What's up? What?
All right. Did you hear what Ezra Miller is going crazy again? He thinks he's saying that he's the Messiah and that the Flash is Jesus of the multiverse.
We can talk about that next time. We're out
Yeah,
of
we'll talk about that
time.
next time. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much for joining me. This is Steampunk Star Raisin of The World is a Mess, and I just want to steampunk it. This is episode 77, September the 21st, 2022.
It's a Wednesday.
You have a nice day, and I will see you 25 billion years. I will.
Bye.